I used to believe that if you gave your child everything, your time, your strength, your love, they'd carry that forward with grace. Turns out, sometimes they just carry it like a burden they can't wait to shake off. My name's Gloria Jean Whitmore. I'm 68, and this is how the son I raised with nothing but love took everything I had left by making me sign it away with my own hands. I didn't grow up expecting much out of life, but when I had Derek, my only son, I swore I'd give him more than I ever had. I taught second grade for 35 years. That's 7. So AM coffee, glue sticks on my sweaters, and 1,000 tiny shoelaces tied in between. At night, while other folks were asleep, I baked pound cakes and lemon pies for the cafe down the road, extra income to cover the bill. We didn't have much, but I made sure Derek never felt it. When his daddy passed, I sold my wedding ring to keep his tuition going. I gave up the trip to Savannah I dreamed of for retirement, just so he could have a used car that wouldn't break down on the way to college. I always figured someday, when the world slowed down, I'd sit on that front porch and breathe. Sip my coffee in peace. No more saving, no more worry. I had about $120,000 in my pension by the time I retired. I didn't touch it. That was for just in case. Derek always said, "Mama, when I start making real money, you won't have to lift a finger." But somehow, the more he earned, the less I heard from him. Calls turned into texts. Texts turned into silence. Still, I didn't hold it against him. That's what mamas do. We forgive before we even get an apology. So when he showed up one Sunday afternoon, saying he wanted to help me organize my finances, I thought, maybe he finally saw how hard I'd worked all these years. He handed me a few papers, said it would make things easier, just some forms to let him assist me with the banking stuff. I didn't even put on my reading glasses. I trusted my boy. I signed where he pointed. And in that moment, without knowing it, I gave him the power to erase me from everything I'd built. About a month after I signed those papers, I went down to my bank to pull out a little cash. Just needed enough for groceries, my blood pressure refill, and a new space heater for the hallway. Winter was setting in early that year. I'd been going to that same branch for over 20 years. I even brought cookies for the tellers every Christmas. So when the girl behind the glass looked up at me and her face fell just slightly, so quick most folks wouldn't notice, I knew something was wrong. She called the manager. They brought me into that little glass office with the fern in the corner and the chair that squeaks if you lean left. And that's where I heard the words that made my ears ring. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore, but this account is no longer in your name." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "That's my pension account." She pulled out paperwork. Not copies, originals. It was transferred a few weeks ago into Derek Whitmore's sole ownership. I stared at her like I was watching someone read my obituary. She went on, slow and careful. "According to these forms, you authorized the transfer yourself." I didn't even remember signing anything close to that. But there it was. My name, my signature, next to a line that said, "Full release of control." I just shook my head. I couldn't feel my hands. And maybe this is where I pause and ask, have you ever trusted someone so much that you stopped reading the fine print? Tell me in the comments if you've ever signed something thinking it was nothing, until it turned out to be everything. I went home quiet. Didn't take off my coat. Didn't kick off my shoes. I just sat down at the kitchen table and laid out the printout like it was a stranger's will. When I called Derek that evening, his voice was all smooth, like molasses hiding something sour. "Mama," he laughed. "We talked about this. Remember? You said I could handle your stuff." "No," I said slowly. "I said you could help with the bills, not take my name off my own money." He sighed like I was inconveniencing him. "Mama, you're getting older. You probably forgot. I made it easier. That money's not gone. It's just in better hands now." That's when I felt it, the silence between us. The moment I knew. He wasn't talking to his mama. He was talking to someone beneath him. That night, after Derek hung up, I just sat there. The kitchen was so quiet. I could hear the old refrigerator hum, the clock tick on the wall, the sound of my own heart beating out of rhythm. I looked across the room at a photo taped to the fridge. Derek, at 6 years old. Front teeth missing, Kool-Aid smile stretched wide. That boy used to draw me crayon cards on Mother's Day. That boy once said, "When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a big yellow house." Now, he was saying I didn't remember giving him permission to steal everything I worked for. I pulled out my pension statement from the drawer. All I saw were zeros. I didn't cry, not at first. I just stared at that page like it belonged to someone else. 35 years of teaching, skipping lunches to grade homework, selling banana bread on weekends, mending clothes instead of buying new. Every choice I made was to make sure he had more than I ever did. And now he looked at me like I was in the way. The next Sunday, I invited him to dinner. I cooked his favorite roast chicken, mashed potatoes, corn pudding, green beans with bacon, and fresh biscuits. I even pulled out the good dishes, the ones I only used on Thanksgiving. Derek showed up an hour late, like always, and didn't bother to apologize. Sat down with his phone in one hand and a story about some real estate flip in the other. Not once did he look me in the eyes. After we ate, I took a breath and said, I went to the bank. Derek, he paused, raised an eyebrow, and they told me the account is in your name now. They showed me the signature. It's mine, but I don't remember writing it. He leaned back in his chair and smiled. That's because you didn't read the papers. You trusted me, like you always do. Then he said it. You don't need that kind of money anymore. Mama, you can't even carry your groceries up the stairs. My mouth went dry. My hands shook under the table. He didn't say it with anger. He said it like it was obvious, like I was past usefulness, like I should just hand over my life and be grateful he's around to collect it. That night, I sat in the dark with my arms wrapped around myself, and one truth echoing louder than anything. He didn't just take my money. He erased the mother who gave it all to him. I didn't sleep much after that dinner. The sound of Derek's voice, so sure, so casual, echoed louder than any storm outside. You don't need that kind of money anymore. Mama! He didn't even flinch when he said it, like my age disqualified me from mattering. A few mornings later, I was sitting on the porch, holding a cup of tea I never sip, when my neighbor Nadine came over. She's retired from county services, always brings extra tomatoes from her garden. She took one look at me and asked, You okay? Glow, you look like somebody pulled the light out of you. I didn't say much, just handed her the bank letter and the copy of the transfer form. She read it slowly, then said something that stuck to my ribs. Gloria, this ain't just shady, it's abuse. You need to talk to someone who knows how to fight this. She gave me the name of an elder law attorney. Kendra Bloom, said she helped a lady in her church when her son cleaned out her retirement. I sat on that name for a day and a half. Part of me was ashamed. The rest was tired. But by the second night, I realized something. If I didn't speak up, I wasn't just losing my money. I was losing my name. Kendra came by on a Tuesday. Young, sharp, no nonsense. She wore flat shoes and brought a notepad that never stopped moving. I told her everything. The papers, the transfer, what Derek said to me. She listened, didn't interrupt, didn't pity me, just nodded and said, Mrs. Whitmore. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was calculated. She compared the new document with one I had signed years ago for a utility proxy. The new one was loaded with legal misdirection. Tiny fonts, buried clauses, things no retired school teacher would ever catch. He disguised a full asset transfer as a convenience form, she said. That's fraud. And because you're over 65, it's classified as elder financial abuse in this state. I sat back in my chair. My hands were cold but steady. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. For the first time in weeks, I could see what had been taken from me and what I had let slide for too long. So when Kendra asked, Do you want to pursue this legally? I didn't tremble. I didn't stammer. I just said, Yes. It's time someone remembered who I am. The morning we filed the complaint, I wore my Sunday sweater, not because it was special, just because it still smelled like lavender from the last time I did laundry without crying. Kendra and I sat in the small office across from the courthouse clerk. She slid over the paperwork, pointed where I needed to sign. My fingers hesitated for half a breath. Then I picked up the pen and signed my name clean. No shaking, no apology. I wasn't signing against my son. I was signing for the woman he tried to erase. Kendra moved fast. She gathered bank records. Power of attorney history. Even pulled Derek's online posts bragging about a real estate flip funded by private capital. That private capital was my pension. She said, Judges don't take kindly to children treating their parents like ATM machines. I didn't tell anyone else what I was doing. Not the church ladies, not my sister. It wasn't pride. It was peace. This wasn't a crusade. It was a quiet return. To myself, to the name I'd nearly let go of. About 2 weeks later, Derek showed up at my door. Didn't call first, just knocked like he used to when he was 8 and wanted a cookie. I opened it, and he said, "You really lawyered up. You're taking me to court. Your own son." I looked at him for a long second before answering. "You're the one who took me out of my own life." "Derek, I'm just walking back in." He didn't argue, just looked around like he expected someone else to speak for me. There wasn't anyone. There didn't need to be. He walked off without saying goodbye. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, same spot where I'd once cried over a bank statement. Only this time, I had a folder in front of me with my name in bold at the top. Kendra had emailed the court date. I read it twice, then folded the paper neatly and slid it under the photo of me and Derek from his high school graduation. I didn't cry. I didn't feel proud either. I just felt returned to myself, to a name that still belonged to me, even when my own son tried to sign it away. Court day came on a Wednesday. Cool morning. Quiet air. I wore my gray skirt, the one I used to wear for parent-teacher nights, the one that always made me stand a little straighter. Kendra walked beside me, her briefcase full of every document that proved I wasn't crazy, forgetful, or overreacting. Just a mother who trusted too long and stayed quiet too much. Derek showed up in a pressed suit and polished shoes. He didn't look at me. He didn't need to. That silence said everything. The courtroom wasn't packed. Just the judge, a few court clerks, and the weight of what had been done to me. Kendra spoke clearly, calmly, laid out how Derek had misrepresented the paperwork, moved the pension funds without my knowledge, and treated his role as my helper like a license to own me. When the judge looked at me and asked if I had anything to say, I stood. My voice wasn't strong, but it didn't shake either. I raised my son on a teacher's salary. I skipped vacations, second helpings, even heating in the winter, so he'd never feel poor. And when I finally stopped working, I didn't ask him for anything, just to let me live with a little peace. But he decided I wasn't capable of having even that. I paused, then looked straight at Derek. "You didn't just take my pension. You took my place as a mother and told me I was done." The courtroom stayed quiet for a long moment after. The judge ruled in my favor. Derek was ordered to return the full amount, with penalties, and barred from holding any financial authority over elders for 10 years. There was no applause, no celebration, just the sound of a gavel, and something inside me finally setting down its burden. That afternoon, I bought new curtains. Then I hired a handyman to fix the back fence, the one Derek promised to take care of 2 summers ago. It's strange what peace sounds like. Sometimes it's just a screen door clicking shut and the wind passing through without resistance. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not erasing what happened, but choosing to outlive it. If you've ever felt erased by someone you raised, if you've ever had to quietly reclaim your worth, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. You're not alone, and you never were. Thank you for walking this journey with me. What part of Gloria's story spoke to you most?